When I held down the startled white deer at the looming feast, the Grand Princess asked for my name in front of everyone. Madam Qin grabbed my hand and beat me to it with a smile.
Her name is Qin Zhao.
In my past life, I didn't expose her. Later, every single thing bestowed by the Grand Princess ended up in Qin Zhuan's hands, while I died in the coldest side courtyard of the Qin Manor. Having been reborn, the white deer once again broke free from its red silk ribbon and charged toward the crowd of female guests in the garden. Qin Zhuan was so terrified that she collapsed to the ground, crying and shouting at me, "Wen Jianyue, stop it quickly." But I didn't move right away. Madam Qin turned back and glared at me, lowering her voice.
What are you standing there for? Go quickly.
The red silk wrapped around its leg grew tighter the more it struggled, even leaving bloody chafing marks on its neck. As everyone screamed and retreated, I ultimately walked over anyway. It wasn't for the sake of the Qin family, but simply because the deer had done nothing wrong. When I grabbed the red silk, the white deer suddenly jerked its head up. Its antler grazed the back of my hand, leaving a bloody gash. Qin Zhuan's crying grew even louder from fright.
Wen Jianyue.
Gritting my teeth, I seized the moment the white deer lowered its head and ripped off that piece of red silk. Freed from its restraint, the white deer fled into the depths of the garden. The entire venue fell dead silent. The Grand Princess laughed and said, "What fine courage." She sat high on the platform, adorned in a golden crown and splendid robes, with a majestic countenance.
Which family's daughter are you?
Madam Qin hurriedly stepped forward, her face plastered with smiles as she replied,
Your Highness, this is this servant's younger daughter, Qin Zhuan.
Qin Zhuan was still slumped on the ground, her face deathly pale. Following Madam Qin's words, everyone looked toward her, but out of deference to the Qin family, they all chose to remain silent. In my past life, it was the exact same scene. Madam Qin identified me as Qin Zhuan. Back then, I was living under someone else's roof, eating the Qin family's food, and living in the Qin family's house. I always thought of repaying their kindness. I thought to myself, it is just a name after all. Qin Zhuan was the young mistress of the Qin residence, and was already far more distinguished than me. So, I lowered my head and accepted it. Afterward, the Princess Royal bestowed jade pendants, name cards, and silks, as well as a personally written invitation, all of which ended up in Qin Zhuan's pockets. I listened to lectures in the Qin residence for my entire life.
If it weren't for Zhuan, how could you have the peaceful life you enjoy today? You only helped a little. How dare you compete with the eldest daughter of the household? The Qin residence has raised you for many years. You should have learned to be content long ago.
I remained content until the very end, only to end up with absolutely nothing. The female official beside the Princess Royal held the register, preparing to write down the name. Your Highness, this humble girl's surname is not Qin. Madam Qin's smile froze. Qin Zhuan also forgot to cry. I knelt on the ground, the back of my hand still dripping with blood. This humble girl, Wen Jianyue, pays respects to Your Highness the Princess Royal. The crowd erupted into a stir. Madam Qin looked as if she wanted to dig her fingernails into my flesh.
Have you lost your mind? Hurry up and correct yourself.
Madam, I am perfectly sober. The Princess Royal raised an eyebrow slightly and slowly sat up straight.
Your name is Wen Jianyue. Yes, then who is Qin Zhuan?
Qin Zhuan's face flushed red and then turned pale. She said timidly, "It is me." As soon as those words were spoken, Madam Qin was left with absolutely no way out. Below the high platform, someone let out a soft chuckle. I followed the sound and looked over. The person stood behind a weeping willow, dressed in green robes. His features were handsome and refined, and he held a half-rolled book in his hand. He was looking at me too, with just one glance. I averted my eyes. I had never met him before. At least, not at this point in this lifetime. The Grand Princess did not press Madam Qin on why she had given the wrong name. She merely had her female official recorded again.
Wen Jianyue, the adopted daughter of the Qin family?
I replied, not an adopted daughter, merely a temporary resident at the Qin Manor. Madam Qin's face had turned incredibly unsightly. I knew there would be a massive scene once we returned to the manor, but I was no longer afraid. The Grand Princess stared at me and suddenly smiled.
A temporary resident, is it?
She said in an amused tone.
Since you are a temporary resident, where is your household registration?
I fell into silence. My household registration was entirely in the hands of the Qin family. Both of my parents had died early. My late mother had been close friends with the old matriarch of the Qin family. When the old matriarch brought me into the manor, she said that when I came of age, she would return the belongings my mother left behind to me and find me a place to settle down. But then she fell ill. Everyone in the Qin Manor claimed the old matriarch couldn't do without me, asking me to stay with her for a few more years. This staying dragged on until my last breath. In my previous life, the Grand Princess did not make things difficult for me. She had someone bring over a deer-shaped jade pendant.
Come to my residence in 3 days.
Your Highness, she is young and does not know proper etiquette. I fear she might offend her betters. years.
The Grand Princess glanced sideways at her.
She didn't seem to offend anyone just now.
Madam Qin did not dare to say another word. The jade pendant was pressed into my palm, cool and heavy. In my previous life, I hadn't even touched this thing. Qin Zhao had worn it at her waist. She showed it off for a full 3 years. Inside the carriage back to the estate, Madam Qin kept a dark face the entire time. Qin Zhao cried until her eyes were red and swollen. She peeked at me secretly, looking extremely aggrieved.
Wen Jianyue, why did you have to expose me in public?
I leaned against the carriage wall. The blood on the back of my hand had already dried, because that is my real name.
But my mother had already spoken.
She just made a mistake. Qin Zhao was left speechless. Madam Qin finally spoke in a cold voice.
Your wings have grown strong now, haven't they?
I did not respond. She stared intently at me, her tone growing colder and colder.
You eat the Qin family's food and use the Qin family's things. But today, look at you, embarrassing the Qin family to our faces. Wen Jianyue, where is your conscience?
This same rhetoric in my past life I had listened to for my entire life. Every single time, I would feel guilty and uneasy, deeply feeling that I truly owed the Qin family too much. Hearing it again now, I only felt weary. If Madam feels it is a loss, I can pay it all back. Madam Qin sneered.
With what will you pay it back?
I replied, in the wooden chest left by my birth mother. There are land deeds, banknotes, and the deed to a small courtyard. The old matriarch told me about them.
To think you actually have those things.
The carriage came to a halt. The carriage curtain was lifted from the outside. Qin Zhao stood beside the carriage, dressed in a moon-white robe. His expression extremely grim. He was Qin Zhuan's biological older brother, and also the person who had trapped me in the Qin estate the longest in my past life. He stared at me.
You want to take back your belongings.
My heart skipped a beat. He had appeared far too quickly. After the banquet in my past life, he clearly hadn't returned from out of town until 3 days later. I gripped the jade tablet tightly and said indifferently, yes. Qin Zhao's gaze fell upon the back of my hand. After a long silence, he said,
I will give them to you.
Madam Qin gasped. Zhao. Qin Zhao ignored her completely. He only stared at me. His gaze was incredibly complex, filled with regret, and carrying that familiar obsession of his. It clicked in my mind instantly. Could he have been reborn as well? Qin Zhao had his men send me back to the side courtyard. The courtyard was small, but fortunately, it was quiet. Not long after I sat down, he arrived. He was holding a roll of gauze in his hand. I pulled my hand away from his reach. Please do not trouble yourself, eldest young master. Qin Zhao's movement froze. I used to always call him Brother Qin. Later on, he forbade it, saying we were family and there was no need for such distance. I believed him. From then on, I lost the proper title of address, and I lost my status as well. Qin Zhao sat across the table from me, his face etched with exhaustion.
Jianyue, I do not blame you for what happened today.
I let out a soft chuckle. How magnanimous of you, eldest young master. Stung by my words, he knitted his brows tightly.
Must you speak to me in this manner?
Otherwise, should I bow my head and plead guilty like in my past life? Qin Zhao's face instantly turned deathly pale. The room fell into absolute silence. Birds chirped outside the window, only to fly away in the blink of an eye. He asked in a hoarse voice.
So you really do remember as well.
When did you reincarnate? The moment the white deer rushed out, Qin Zhao closed his eyes.
Me too. No wonder.
No wonder he rushed back to the manor early. I didn't care when he died in his previous life. That was irrelevant now. Qin Zhao placed the gauze on the table.
Jianyue, I've thought a lot since my reincarnation. In our past life, our family treated you harshly. We owe you. This time, I will protect you. I will never let Mother and Zhuan take your things again.
I stared at the roll of gauze, not moving for a long time. If I had heard these words in my past life, I would have cried, feeling that my years of heartache were finally acknowledged. But having died once, my heart had already grown cold. When some words are said too late, they become utterly meaningless. I will retrieve my belongings myself.
Whether you believe me or not.
You cannot stop me from leaving. His expression changed.
Leave.
To reclaim my household registration, to take back the belongings left by my late mother, and to move out of the Qin household. Qin Zhao suddenly stood up.
No.
I looked up at him, realizing he had overreacted. He slowly sat back down.
Jianyue, you are a lone woman. Where can you go if you leave the Qin family? The world is dangerous, and people's hearts are unpredictable. You mustn't act out of spite.
I let out a bitter laugh. Did I live a comfortable life when I stayed in the Qin manor in my past life? Qin Zhao was left speechless. You claimed I couldn't leave, claimed Zhuan was still young, claimed mother had a hot temper, and claimed the old madam missed me during her illness. Afterward, when the old madam passed away, you claimed the Qin household was in chaos, forcing me to wait again. When Qin Zhuan went out to attend banquets, you forced me to manage things for her. When Madam Qin had a headache, you forced me to wait on her. You claimed you would make arrangements for me, yet you dragged it out year after year. His hands slowly clenched into fists. Qin Zhao, I did not live a second life just to listen to you say, wait ever again. His eyes rimmed with red.
I won't drag it out this time.
And I won't wait anymore. Qin Zhao's breath hitched. Qin Jian's voice came from outside the door.
Brother, mother is calling for you.
She pushed the door open and entered, seeing me sitting opposite Qin Zhao. Her eyes instantly turned defensive.
What are you two talking about?
Qin Zhao closed his eyes briefly.
Nothing.
Qin Jian bit her lip.
Wen Jianyue, mother said to hand over the jade pendant. In 3 days I will go to the princess's manor in your place.
Before I could speak, Qin Zhao already said in a cold voice, "Who allowed you to come here?" Qin Jian was stunned. In the past, Qin Zhao doted on her the most. Whatever she wanted, he would give her. This was the first time he had ever spoken to her in such a tone. Qin Jian's eyes instantly welled with tears.
Brother, do you blame me too? Clearly, she was the one who disgraced the Jin family.
Who was the one who lost face? Think it through before you speak.
Qin Jian froze in place. I stood up and walked over to her. She took a step back instinctively. I pulled the jade pendant from my sleeve and tied it back to my waist. In 3 days I will go myself. That night, the Qin household was in an uproar until midnight. Madam Qin smashed her teacup. Qin Jian cried until she was gasping for breath. Qin Zhao stayed in the main room for a very long time. I did not show my face. In my past life, I took everyone else's feelings to heart, but forgot to ask myself if I was tired. Now, lying in bed and closing my eyes, I managed to get a rare, peaceful night's sleep. The next morning, Qin Zhao sent someone to deliver a small wooden box. Inside was my household registration paper, along with the deed, land title, and banknotes for the small courtyard left by my birth mother. But not everything was there. The old maid who delivered the items said the eldest young master wanted me not to worry, as they were still searching the storehouse for the rest. I held the registration paper in my hand and stared at it for a long time. The paper was slightly old, with yellowed edges. Clearly printed on it was my real name, Wen Jianyue. My eyes instantly grew hot with tears. It was not because of Qin Zhao, but because I had finally found myself again. 3 days later, I went to the Princess Royal's manor. No one from the Qin family accompanied me. Madam Qin claimed to be ill, and Qin Zhao had planned to come, but I refused him. When I stepped down from the carriage alone, there were already many female guests at the gate. When they saw the deer medallion at my waist, they all began to size me up.
So this is the girl who pinned down the white deer at Looming Hall. I heard she isn't the young mistress of the Qin family.
Then why did Madam Qin report the wrong name that day?
Looking straight ahead, I followed the female official inside. The Princess Royal's manor was lush with flowers and trees. The female official led me to a waterside pavilion. There was already someone inside. The young gentleman in green from behind the weeping willows that day was sitting at the desk, sorting through the guest registry for the Princess Royal. He looked up at me. I bowed and said, "Greetings, young master." He put down his brush, stood up, and returned the bow, "Miss Wen." I was momentarily stunned. Hearing those 2 words from his mouth felt exceptionally steady. The Princess Royal emerged from behind the screen. Seeing this, she smiled and said, "You two are certainly polite." The young master in green stepped aside. The Grand Princess pointed at him.
This is Xie Chuan, my nephew. He usually manages some of the affairs in the manor. He is also the one reviewing the registry today.
Xie Chuan. My heart skipped a beat. I had heard this name in my past life. In my previous life, after the Grand Princess rewarded Qin Zhao often received items sent from the Xi Manor, a box of osmanthus candy, a travelogue, or an invitation to the Tingyu Pavilion. Qin Zhao found those things dull and tedious. Once, she smiled and asked me,
Wen Jianyue, don't you think Xie Chuan is just too boring? Every time he sends something, he always asks if the deer is doing well.
"Perhaps he is just concerned about that deer." Qin Jian threw the invitation to me.
Then decline it on my behalf. Just say it is doing well.
After that, Xie Chuan gradually stopped sending things. The next time I heard his name was many years later. Qin Zhao got drunk, sat at the entrance of the side courtyard, and said coldly,
Xie Chuan looked for you for a very long time. Unfortunately, he only knew the name Qin Zhao.
I was extremely ill at the time and did not understand. Now, I understand. In my past life, the name registered at the Grand Princess's manor was Qin Zhao. The one Xie Chuan was looking for was also Qin Zhao. The Grand Princess asked me, "What reward do you want?" I knelt down. "This humble girl does not dare to ask for a reward. I only beg for a word from your highness. Speak." This humble girl wishes to move out of the Qin manor and establish my own independent household. The waterside pavilion fell silent. The Grand Princess did not agree immediately. Xie Chuan's gaze fell upon me and quickly drifted away again. The Grand Princess said,
The Qin family has raised you for many years.
"And you want to leave just like that?" I kowtowed and said, "I will repay them for raising me, but my name, my household registration, and the belongings left by my late mother should all return to my hands." The Princess Royal stared at me.
You have certainly thought things through.
I said in a low voice, once you have died, you understand. As soon as these words left my mouth, even I was stunned. The Princess Royal also froze for a moment. Xie Chuan's fingers paused slightly. The Princess Royal did not press further.
This palace will ask the Qin Manor about this. Go back first and wait for news.
I complied. When leaving the water pavilion, Xie Chuan escorted me to the corridor. We walked in silence. Just before reaching the turn, he suddenly asked,
Does the wound on Lady Wen's hand still hurt?
He nodded. After another moment, he said,
The deer has been settled.
I looked up at him. His expression was serious.
The white deer you saved that day ate some grass last night, and the wound on its antlers has been treated.
I couldn't help but smile. Did you specifically bring this up with me, young master?
Yes.
His ears turned slightly red, yet he remained upright and proper.
I thought you would be worried about it.
My smile faded. In my past life, no one ever thought I would care about anything, yet Xie Chuan remembered. That deer was one I had held down with my own hands. I curtsied. Thank you. He gazed at me and suddenly said in a low voice,
Lady Wen, the rainy ferry crossing 8 years ago. Have you ever been there?
8 years ago, old Madam Qin went to Lingshan Temple outside the city to burn incense. On the return journey, it rained, and the ferry crossing was crowded with people. A young boy was pushed off the stone steps, nearly falling into the river. I grabbed him. His forehead was cut, and he had no one with him, so I tore my own handkerchief to cover his wound. He asked for my name, and I replied Wen Jianyue. He said he would thank me in the future. Afterward, Qin Zhao found out about this. His expression was extremely displeased. He asked me,
You only went out once. How did you manage to provoke another stranger?
I anxiously explained to him, but he remained unhappy. After that, I never heard any news of that boy again. I said hesitantly, could it be? Xie Chuan looked at me, emotions swirling in the depths of his eyes.
That person was me.
I parted my lips, suddenly not knowing what to say. Xie Chuan pulled an old copper coin from his sleeve. A piece of faded red string was tied to the coin. I recognized it. It was something I had casually given him back then. I had told him to use it to get a bowl of hot water at the tea stall, as the owner recognized people from the Qin Manor. Yet, he had kept it all this time. Xie Chuan stared at the copper coin, his voice softening.
I went to the Qin Manor to look for you later.
My heart suddenly tightened. He continued.
The guards said there was no Wen Jianyue in the manor.
My eyes lit up as I stared at him, and he did not avoid my gaze.
I didn't believe it, so I sent a visiting card again. The next day, someone replied saying you had left the capital with a distant relative.
As for who the person replying back then was, there was no longer any need to ask. After returning to the Qin family, Qin Zhao was already waiting in the side courtyard. When he saw me, he stood up.
What did the Princess Royal say to you?
I walked into the room, took off the waist token, and placed it on the desk. I will ask the Qin Manor. Did Xie Chuan come looking for me 8 years ago? Qin Zhao's expression changed slightly, but this slight change was already enough. I said softly, it really was you.
You were young back then.
And so?
He is from the Xi family, of noble status. If you got involved with him, the Qin family wouldn't have been able to protect you.
I let out a bitter laugh. So you told him that I had left the capital with a distant relative just to protect me. Qin Zhao looked up, his expression full of suppressed emotion.
Back then, I didn't know why I was so angry. Only later did I understand. I didn't want anyone to take you away.
By what right? My question left him speechless. I continued, Qin Zhao, in our past life you blocked Xie Chuan. In this life you want to keep me trapped again. You keep saying it is to protect me, but you have never once asked if I am willing. A look of pain finally welled up in Qin Zhao's eyes.
I know I was wrong.
You realized it too late. He took a step forward.
Jianyue, this time, I will never do that again. I will marry you properly as my primary wife. I will make you the mistress of the Qin household. It won't matter, even if mother tries to stop it, and Zhuan won't dare to bully you ever again.
Hearing this made my chest feel tight. Did I long for these words in my past life? Perhaps I did, but by the end, I wouldn't even admit it to myself. Yet hearing them now, I only found them absurd. Mistress of the Qin household, Qin Zhao, do you think this is compensation? His throat tightened.
Everything I can give you, I will give it all to you.
The things I want are already in my hands. I picked up the household registration document, my name, my household registry, and my freedom. Qin Zhao stared intently at the piece of paper, the color draining from his face bit by bit.
Do you truly not want me anymore?
I remained silent. He suddenly grew anxious.
In our past life, you were in the Qin household for so many years, and you treated me so well. When I coughed in the winter, you stayed by my side all night. When Zhuan caused trouble, you cleaned up after her. When mother scolded you, you never talked back. If you didn't care for me, how could you have endured until that point?
Because I had nowhere else to go. Qin Zhao froze completely. I did not soften my heart. I continued. Because I thought the Qin family was my benefactor. Because the old madam treated me well. Because I owed a debt of gratitude. Qin Zhao, you mistook my endurance for affection, and my lack of options for willingness. Tears welled up in his eyes. Jianyue, don't call me that. I pushed the door open. First young master, please leave. Qin Zhao stood there for a long time. Finally, he bent down, picked up the gauze on the table, and then put it back down.
I will give you the land deed and the banknotes tomorrow.
He walked to the doorway, his voice incredibly hoarse.
Don't be in a hurry to move. At least wait for the Princess Royal's manor to reply. The house outside has been empty for a long time. It needs to be cleaned up.
I did not reply. He said in a low voice.
There is no other meaning behind these words. I am just worried you will suffer living there.
I looked out the window. Even if I suffer there, it is still better than staying here. Qin Zhao's shoulders stiffened. In the end, he left. Madam Qin came to the side courtyard the next day. She brought 2 older maidservants with her, her expression extremely sour.
Wen Jianyue, must you make such a big scene out of this?
I ordered the maid to serve tea. She did not sit down, but pointed a finger at me in accusation.
The Princess Royal's estate sent people to inquire. They asked if you were being detained by the Qin family and why your household registration has not been returned to you yet. You've certainly grown capable now.
I replied, if Madam had returned my belongings sooner, none of this would have happened. Madam Qin's chest heaved with anger.
You are a mere orphan girl. If the Qin family hadn't taken you in, who knows where you would have died long ago. Now that you've clung to the Princess Royal, you turn your back on us.
I did not cling to anyone. I said, emphasizing every single word. I was the one who saved the white deer. I was the one who submitted the name. When the Princess Royal asked, I answered truthfully. If Madam feels embarrassed, it is because deep down, Qin Zhuan's name should never have been submitted in the first place. Madam Qin raised her hand to slap me, but halfway down, her hand was caught. Qin Zhao stood at the doorway, his face frighteningly cold.
Mother.
Madam Qin stared at him in shock.
You are stopping me for her sake.
She is not wrong.
Qin Zhao said, brushing her hand away. Madam Qin was stunned. Qin Zhao closed his eyes briefly, then said slowly,
all of the Wen family's belongings will be returned to her today. No one is allowed to stop this anymore.
Have you lost your mind?
Madam Qin pointed at me.
If she leaves, what will the outsiders say about the Qin family? They will say we mistreated an orphan girl. They will say Zhuan stole her credit.
Then we shall admit it.
Madam Qin was completely speechless. Even I was somewhat surprised. In my past life, Qin Zhao would never have let the Qin family suffer embarrassment. He valued reputation above all else, so much so that he could sacrifice my entire life for it. Now, he was willing to admit the mistake in public. Yet, I felt no satisfaction. I only felt that my past self was truly pathetic. Qin Zhuan arrived as well. She stood outside the courtyard, having clearly listened for quite a while. Upon spotting her, Madam Qin immediately said,
Zhuan, hurry and persuade your brother.
Qin Zhuan did not look at Qin Zhao. She stared at me, her eyes still somewhat swollen.
Wen Jianyue, are you really leaving?
She bit her lip.
If you leave, who will keep me company?
This question was asked with such self-righteousness that I nearly laughed. Miss Qin, the Qin estate has maids and older servants, as well as your brother and mother. You do not lack company. She lowered her head.
They all yield to me. It is boring.
What nonsense are you talking about?
Qin Zhuan shrank her shoulders, but she did not back down. She whispered,
I am not wrong.
Madam Qin was too furious to speak. Qin Zhuan walked up to me.
I indeed coveted that jade pendant. Mother said the Grand Princess favors bold girls, which could secure a bright future for me. But the mere thought of going to the princess's manor terrifies me. I do not want to follow rules every day. Nor do I want to meet so many nobles. I was just angry that you exposed me to my face, making me lose face.
In my past life, I had resented Qin Zhuan. I resented her for claiming my name and for taking my benefits, while still complaining that those things were tedious. But at this moment, I suddenly realized that she was also just being pushed along. It was just that she had the Qin family to protect her, so she could cry out her grievances, while I could not.
Will you ever come back?
I won't.
Then what if I want to find you in the future?
Depends on whether I feel like talking to you. Qin Zhuan said angrily. How can you be like this? I smiled slightly. I've always been like this. I just never said it before. 3 days later, the Qin family delivered my belongings to the princess's manor. The grand princess personally inspected them. Land deeds, bank drafts, property deeds, old jewelry, and 2 volumes of journals left by my late mother. Nothing was missing. Qin Zhao stood in the hall, looking utterly exhausted. Once the grand princess finished the inventory, she said indifferently,
The Qin family handled this matter with very little grace.
Madam Qin did not come. Qin Zhao took the brunt of these words on behalf of the Qin family.
Your Highness is right to lecture us.
Since Wen Jianyue is leaving the manor, do you have any objections?
Qin Zhao lowered his eyes. No. His voice grew softer.
She wants to leave, and the Qin family will not stop her.
The grand princess glanced at him.
Good.
After saying that, she looked at me.
The small courtyard left by your mother has been uninhabited for a long time in the south of the city. I sent people to look at it. The roof needs repairs, and the well needs to be cleared. If you don't mind, you can stay at the bamboo courtyard in my manor for half a month first.
I knelt down to express my gratitude. Qin Zhao's fingers twitched slightly. He seemed to want to say something, but in the end, he held back. After leaving the princess's manor, he called out to me, Jianyue. I stopped in my tracks. He stepped closer.
During these days, I will send people to repair the courtyard in the south of the city. You don't have to see me. I will only send the craftsmen there.
No need.
Please rest assured, I won't go inside.
Qin Zhao, I know you are feeling regretful, but even if you do all this, I will not turn back. Qin Zhao's eyes welled with tears.
I understand.
No, you don't. You always think that as long as you change, I should give you another chance. But my life shouldn't revolve around your regrets. His lips parted slightly, yet he found himself speechless. Just then, Xie Chuan walked out from the gates of the princess's manor. He held an oil paper umbrella in his hand. The sky had turned overcast. He handed the umbrella to me. I took the umbrella. Thank you. Qin Zhao stared at the umbrella and suddenly let out a cold laugh.
Young Master Xi is certainly being very attentive. She has only just left the Qin manor. Aren't you being a bit too hasty, young Master Xi?
Xie Chuan did not get angry.
I am not in a hurry.
He looked at me, his tone sincere.
Miss Wen needs to settle herself first.
Holding the handle of the umbrella, my heart finally felt at ease. Qin Zhao glared at him.
By what right do you say that?
Xie Chuan replied.
As an old friend.
Qin Zhao sneered.
An old friend whom you've only met twice.
Xie Chuan lowered his gaze and said, more than twice. Qin Zhao's expression changed. Xie Chuan continued.
8 years ago at the ferry crossing, she saved my life, and at Looming Hall, she saved herself. In our past life, I looked for the wrong person.
I snapped my head to look at him. He remembered too. Xie Chuan met my gaze, his voice barely a whisper.
Miss Wen, I too have been given a second chance.
As the rain began to fall, I had already sat inside the carriage. Xie Chuan did not follow me. Neither did Qin Zhao. Holding the umbrella, my heart could not calm down for a long time. I thought only Qin Zhao and I remembered. I did not expect Xie Chuan to remember too. In our past life, he found the wrong person. Then what happened to him later? Did he know I was at the Qin residence? Had he ever seen me? These doubts weighed heavily on my mind, making me feel rather suffocated. When we arrived at Tingju Garden, the female official from the princess's manor helped me settle in. The room was clean, with bamboo growing in the courtyard and newly tailored fabrics placed by the window. I felt a bit uneasy.
There is no need to be formal, miss. Her Highness has given her word. You may stay here in peace.
I asked, is young Master Xi in the manor? The female official's smile deepened.
The young master is in the front hall.
I hesitated for a moment, but went anyway. Xie Chuan was standing under the veranda. Rainwater slid down the eaves. Hearing footsteps, he turned to look at me.
Miss Wen.
I got straight to the point. You remember too, the past life.
I remember.
When did you reincarnate?
The day before the Looming Feast.
He woke up earlier than I did.
I rushed to Looming immediately. I originally wanted to find a chance to warn you, but I didn't expect you had already signed up yourself.
Did you find out later in our past life? Xie Chuan fell silent. This silence made my heart sink. After a long while, he replied.
I found out too late.
I said nothing.
In my past life, I had always thought that the lady at the Looming Feast was Qin Zhao, but she didn't remember the fairy, nor did she care about the white deer. When I asked her about the red string and the copper coin, she claimed she had no such things. I grew suspicious. After looking into it, I found out there was a Lady Wen in the Qin manor. I wanted to see you, but the Qin family refused.
And then?
Later, I received word, claiming you were critically ill. When I rushed to the Qin manor, Qin Zhao wouldn't let me in. He said you didn't wish to see visitors.
My fingers tightened bit by bit. I had absolutely no idea about any of this in my past life.
I kept watch outside the Qin manor all night.
Xie Chuan's voice grew softer.
At dawn, white mourning banners were hung inside the manor.
My chest tightened. He remained calm, but his eyes had already reddened.
I never got to see you.
I stood under the corridor, a lump forming in my throat. After a long silence, Xie Chuan pulled that old copper coin from his sleeve.
In my past life, I buried this in front of your grave. Only then did I learn your real name was Wen Jianyue.
I took the copper coin. The red string had already rotted away. I didn't know what to say, but Xie Chuan took a step back.
Lady Wen, I am telling you all this, not because I want you to feel indebted. In this lifetime, look after yourself first. If you want to investigate the past, I will help you. If you want to leave the capital, I will also help you. If you don't want to see anyone, I won't disturb you.
He paused for a moment.
I only want you to understand that this time, when you gave your own name, I am extremely happy.
I looked up at him. The sound of the rain grew heavier. I suddenly asked, then what about you? What do you want? Xie Chuan froze. He didn't seem to expect that I would ask. It took him a long while to lower his eyes, the tips of his ears slowly turning red.
I want to see you often.
He immediately added,
But if you are unwilling, that is fine too.
holding the copper coin. I suddenly wanted to laugh. Xie Chuan, how can even your desire to see me be so incredibly proper? His ears grew even redder.
I was afraid of annoying you.
I studied him for a moment. I am not annoyed now. A spark lit up in his eyes, but he quickly suppressed it again.
Then tomorrow I will have someone send you the blueprints for the courtyard in the south of the city. You can decide how to renovate it yourself.
I nodded. He still stood there perfectly straight.
Also, Beilu is able to stroll around today.
I finally laughed out loud. Why are you still so concerned about the deer?
Because you would ask.
I indeed would have asked. I stayed at the Princess Royal's manor. No one from the Qin family came to cause trouble again. I heard from the female official that Madam Qin had fallen ill, and Qin Zhao was locked in her room to learn proper etiquette. Qin Zhao went out early and returned late every day, personally supervising the workers renovating my small courtyard. I did not go to see it. Xie Chuan, however, came every day. He never stayed long. Sometimes he brought blueprints, sometimes account books, and sometimes he left only a single sentence about what Bailu ate that day. The Princess Royal found it quite amusing.
Xie Chuan used to be a man of few words. This palace actually thought he was going to spend his entire life with his books.
I was drinking tea and nearly choked. The Grand Princess laughed without any concealment.
Don't be afraid. I won't force you. In a woman's life, she must put herself first before anyone else. If Xie Chuan cannot wait, then it is his lack of fortune.
I lowered my head, feeling a warmth in my heart. The Grand Princess added,
But since he could wait through his past life, and didn't get to be with you until this life.
How could he not wait? I looked up in surprise. Your Highness knows. The Grand Princess's expression grew a bit distant.
I don't remember any past life, but I can read people. The way you two look at Qin Zhao is completely off.
I fell silent. The Grand Princess set down her teacup.
Qin Zhao came to request an audience with me.
My heart stirred. What did he say?
He said since you do not wish to see him, he will not show himself. He only begged me to protect you for a while.
I did not say a word. The Grand Princess stared at me.
Do you want to see him?
I thought about it for a long time. No. After saying it aloud, my heart actually felt lighter.
Then you won't see him.
Half a month later, the small courtyard in the south of the city was fully renovated. I moved back there. On that day, Qin Zhao came. She was wearing a light yellow dress and brought only one maid with her. Upon seeing me, she stood awkwardly at the door.
I didn't come to make peace.
I asked, then what did you come for? She snatched a wooden box from her maid's hands.
This is something my mother kept back then. A hairpin belonging to your mother. I only found it a few days ago.
I took the wooden box and opened it. Inside was a plain silver hairpin. It looked old and worn, with the character Wen engraved on the head.
My mother didn't know about this. I brought it here myself. Don't tell her.
Aren't you afraid she'll scold you? I am, she said, her mouth twitching.
But I figured this belongs to you.
I stared straight at her. Qin Zhao grew uneasy under my gaze.
Don't look at me like that. I'm not that good of a person. I used to just want to steal your spotlight, and I thought it was only right. But afterward I realized the things I stole weren't all that interesting. The female officials from the princess's manor came to teach me etiquette, and my head was about to explode. Only then did I realize how annoying it must have been for you to reply to those invitations for me in your past life, and to remember all those rules of etiquette for me.
I closed the wooden box. It is good that you understand.
Can't you be a little touched?
No. She stamped her foot in anger. After a moment, she asked in a low voice,
Can I still come by in the future?
Send a calling card before you come. Her eyes lit up.
So that is a yes?
Depends on my mood. Qin Zhao finally smiled. As she smiled, tears began to fall.
Wen Jianyue, I'm sorry.
I accept this apology. Once my life settled down, I moved into my birth mother's old courtyard. The courtyard wasn't large, but it was my own. The Grand Princess helped me hire 2 reliable maidservants and send someone to finalize the transfer of the land deed. For the first time, I didn't have to live at the mercy of the Qin family. Xie Chuan still visited often. He properly sent a calling card every single time. If I didn't want to see him, he would have someone leave the items and depart. One rainy day, he brought over a basket of green plums. I asked, How did you know I like to eat these? He lowered his head to adjust his sleeves.
I heard the Qin family's maids mention it before. I didn't pry too much.
Then what did you pry into? He deliberately avoided answering my question. I suddenly felt a bit mischievous. Xie Chuan, what else did you find out about me in our past life? He pursed his lips.
You love green plums, dislike sweet cakes, are sensitive to the heat, write with extremely neat handwriting, prefer peace and quiet, and dislike the crabapple tree in the back garden of the Qin manor.
I was stunned. Even I had almost forgotten. In my past life, The crabapple tree in the Qin Manor's back garden bloomed abundantly. Qin Zhao favored it, and Madam Qin favored it too. They always forced me to set up banquets under the blossoms. I didn't like it, because that place was too far from my side courtyard, and every single setup was exhausting. I had never mentioned this to anyone.
The maid said that every time you finished setting up a banquet, you would stay under the corridor for a very long time.
What use was there in knowing all this?
No use.
He looked up at me.
But I wanted to know.
I lowered my head, peeled a green plum, and frowned from the sourness. Xie Chuan immediately handed me some tea. I didn't take the tea, but first asked him, "Did you take a liking to me very early on?" His hand trembled, spilling some of the tea. I couldn't help but laugh. Xie Chuan set down the teacup, the tips of his ears turning incredibly red. Yet he did not dodge the question.
Yes.
He answered solemnly.
8 years ago at the ferry crossing, when you gave me those copper coins, I remembered you. Later, at the looming banquet, I saw you hold down the white deer, and I remembered you even more.
I asked on purpose. Just remembered? Xie Chuan stared at me, his eyes clear and bright.
It was love.
My heart skipped a beat, he added.
But you don't have to rush to answer me. I'll wait for you.
I asked, wait for how long? He pondered seriously for a moment. As long as you are willing to let me wait, that is how long I will wait. The way this man spoke always had a way of bringing me to tears. I turned my head away. This green plum is too sour, Xie Chuan hurriedly said.
I'll bring something else next time.
No need. I picked one up and handed it to him. You try one too. He took it, and actually ate it. It was so sour that his brow furrowed deeply. I studied his face, and finally burst out laughing. The next time I saw Qin Zhao was 2 months later. That day, I was returning from the Princess Royal's manor. The carriage stopped in front of my small courtyard. Qin Zhao was standing at the entrance of the alley. He did not step forward. Only after I got down from the carriage did he bow to me from a distance. The address Miss Wen made me pause in my tracks. In the past, he refused to call me that. Now that he finally did, it was already too late. I walked forward. Is there something? Qin Zhao pulled a letter from his sleeve.
The old matriarch left this for you. I found it at the bottom of her old chest.
I took it. On the envelope was written, "To be opened by Jianyue." The handwriting belonged to the old Madame Qin. My eyes grew hot with tears. Qin Zhao said softly.
I didn't open it.
I stared at the letter, my throat tightening. Thank you. He shook his head.
It is only right that I return it to you.
We stood at the entrance of the alley, looking at each other in silence. After a long while, Qin Zhao said,
Juwan told me she came to see you. She has changed a lot since she returned.
I replied, that is good. Qin Zhao gave a bitter smile.
After you left, the Qin family finally came to their senses.
I did not respond. He stared at me, his eyes filled with intense memories.
In my past life, I always thought you would never leave. You had a soft nature and carried a heavy heart. As long as I asked you to stay, you would stay.
I did indeed stay in my past life.
But that was not of your own free will.
He finally uttered these words.
In my past life, it was only at the very end that I realized you were so gravely ill. And yet, I still refused to let Xie Chuan see you. I was afraid that if you saw him, you would realize you could have had another path. After you died, I entered your room and saw that you had filled an entire sheet of paper. It was covered entirely with your real name.
This matter, I had almost forgotten myself. During the final period of my past life, I was too sick to get out of bed. I was suddenly terrified that after I died, no one would know who I was. So I took some paper and wrote Wen Jianyue over and over again until my hand grew weak. Qin Zhao took a deep breath.
Only then did I realize how miserably I had trapped you.
I remained silent. Qin Zhao lowered his head.
In this lifetime, I do not ask for you to look back. I only ask that you do not hate me so much that you hurt yourself.
I said calmly, I will not hurt myself just to resent you. Qin Zhao, you are not that important. These words were extremely soft, yet they made his tears fall. He did not wipe them away.
Perhaps this is for the best.
He took a step back.
Wen Jianyue, may you be safe and well in the future.
You take care too. He turned and walked away. This time, I did not stare at his retreating figure again. After I went inside, I opened the letter from old Mrs. Qin. The letter was extremely short. She addressed me as Jianyue. If I depart this world, do not panic. The belongings your mother left behind, I have kept safe for you. If the Qin household treats you well, then stay a bit longer. If the Qin household treats you poorly, then move out. A woman cannot live solely on past kindness. You have your own name, your own origin, and you should have your own destination. After reading the letter, I cried for a long time. It turned out the old lady had planned an escape route for me long ago. It was just that in my past life, no one had ever delivered this letter to me. At dusk, Xie Chuan arrived. Seeing my swollen eyes, his expression tightened.
Who bullied you?
I handed him the letter. After he finished reading it, he sat quietly by my side, After a long while he said,
The old lady was a wise and sensible person.
Xie Chuan did not urge me to stop crying. He simply poured a cup of warm water and placed it by my hand. I asked him, Xie Chuan, why do you think a person dies once and lives again?
To avoid being trapped in the past again, and to meet the person they are meant to meet.
I smiled. What you said is a bit improper. He blushed and smiled.
Then I take back the second half of the sentence.
You are not allowed to take it back. Xie Chuan was stunned. I lowered my head to fold the letter. I heard you clearly. He stared at me, his eyes gradually lighting up.
Miss Wen, may I come again tomorrow?
I stared at him. Is there a single day you haven't come? He was stumped by my question. Looking uncharacteristically flustered, my mood suddenly improved by a lot.
Xie Chuan is here.
Come over for dinner tomorrow. No need to send a formal calling card. When Xie Chuan stood up, his sleeve knocked over the teacup. Tea spilled all over the table. He cleaned it up in a frantic rush while I sat to the side laughing. His ears were completely red, yet he still said with utmost seriousness,
I will come earlier tomorrow. What do you like to eat?
Green plums, but don't bring the seeds. He also smiled.
All right, I won't bring them.
Half a year later, Qin Zhao became betrothed. It was not to a high-ranking or noble family, but to the second young master of the He family, from the west of the city, who ran a bookstore. Madam Qin was so angry, she didn't eat for several days. Qin Zhao, however, was extremely happy. She ran over to tell me,
He doesn't mind my lack of manners, and even says that my being a bit lively is actually a good thing.
You like him? She nodded with a blushing face.
I do. Before, I always thought marrying high was the only way to have glory.
Latter, I realized those high places have too many rules, and I wouldn't be able to endure it. It is rare for you to see things so clearly. Qin Zhao rolled her eyes at me.
Don't always sound like my master.
Do not make improper comparisons. She was taken aback for a moment, then huffed and laughed.
Wen Jianyue, you are truly hard to please.
I slowly sipped my tea. So come less often.
I will come anyway.
She laughed at her own words after saying them. Qin Zhao did not show his face. I heard he had gone to another region to take up an official post. Before leaving, he sent someone to deliver a box of items. There were no valuables inside, just a few torn pieces of paper. It had the real name I used in my past life. He had actually brought it back too. I stared at them for a long time and finally burned them. Xie Chuan stayed by my side. After the fire went out, he asked,
Are you willing to let go?
That was me in my past life. She suffered too much. It is time for her to rest. Xie Chuan took my hand. This time, he didn't let go right away. And I didn't pull back either, he whispered.
Then what about you in this life?
Me, in this life. Tomorrow, I want to go see the white deer.
I'll go with you.
The day after tomorrow, I want to go outside the city.
I'll go with you too.
And after that? He was so earnest it was almost endearing.
Wherever you go, I can accompany you. If you want to go alone, I will wait for you at home.
My heart softened. Xie Chuan, how are you so good at coaxing people? He shook his head. I only speak the truth. Side story. Spring of the following year. The Grand Princess hosted the looming banquet again. I went as well. This time, I no longer stood behind the female relatives of the Qin family. The Grand Princess had me sit by her side and asked if I was living comfortably in the small courtyard in the south of the city. I replied extremely well. Xie Chuan stood not far away, chatting with others. He wore green robes today, just like when I first saw him. A white deer strolled slowly through the garden. The wound on its antlers had long since healed. Qin Zhao also arrived nearby, accompanied by the second young master of the He family. She waved at me from a distance. Madam Qin didn't come, and Qin Zhao didn't come either, but I still felt no regret in my heart. Halfway through the banquet, the Grand Princess suddenly asked me, The Xie family sent word a few days ago.
They wanted to test the waters with you.
I lowered my head to sip my tea. What did they say? The Grand Princess smiled.
Stop playing dumb.
My face grew hot. Xie Chuan's mother had visited several times. Each time she was extremely polite, she said.
Our Xie family is in no hurry. We only want to know if the young lady is willing. If she is not, I will go back and scold Xie Chuan and make him keep waiting.
I didn't answer at the time because I still wanted to live a little longer. A life that belonged solely to myself. Xie Chuan didn't rush me either. He still came over for meals as usual, still accompanied me to watch the white deer as usual, and still took every word I said to heart as usual. The Grand Princess stared at me.
Have you thought it through?
I looked up and glanced not far away. Xie Chuan happened to look over as well. He didn't know what the Grand Princess and I were chatting about, and his expression was somewhat tense. I suddenly smiled. In my past life, I feared most when others made decisions for me. In this life, it is finally my turn to give the nod. I set down my teacup. I have thought it through.
I agree.
I looked at Xie Chuan. He stood up straight, but the panic in his eyes could not be hidden. I agree. Xie Chuan froze. The Grand Princess burst out laughing. Everyone in the garden looked looked over. I felt a bit embarrassed and lowered my head to sip my tea. Before long, Xie Chuan walked up to me. He bowed, his voice tight.
Miss Wen.
I looked up. Yes?
Her Highness just told me,
Told you what? He paused for a moment, as if afraid he had misheard.
saying that you are willing.
I looked at him, deliberately asking, willing to do what? Xie Chuan froze completely. The princess royal beside us couldn't stop laughing. In the end, I didn't have the heart to tease him further. Xie Chuan, I am willing. His eyes instantly grew red. I had never seen him like this before, both overjoyed and cautious. He reached out his hand, stopping it in midair. May I? I placed my hand in his palm. You may. He grasped my hand very gently. After a moment, he squeezed it a bit tighter. A white deer strolled past us. It paused for a brief moment, then lowered its head to graze. I watched it, suddenly remembering the looming feast from my past life. I remembered Madam Qin rushing to announce that name, and how I had bowed my head and accepted someone else's life. Fortunately, this time, I didn't accept it. Xie Chuan asked in a low voice what I was thinking about. I replied, thinking about how. Thankfully, I gave my real name that day. He gazed at me.
Wen Jianyue.
Yes, he smiled.
It is a beautiful name.
I smiled too. I think so too. Afterward, Xie Chuan often said, the first time his heart stirred was at the ferry crossing 8 years ago. I said that was wrong, and that it must have been at the looming banquet. He said that was also wrong. I asked him which time it was then. He pondered for a long time, and answered very seriously. Every time. I found him too cheesy, so he shut his mouth. But before long, he would softly call my name Jianyue again, and I would answer every single time. Because in this lifetime, no one will ever claim another's name for me again. I am Wen Jianyue. I was in the past, I am now, and I will be forevermore.